Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I'm Peter, and I'm going to be talking about The Haunting of Hill House Season 1, Episode 4. It's called The Twin Thing. So, full spoilers for the episode, as always. So this was the Luke episode, this was Luke focused, and it kind of gave us the other side of his various parts that we'd kind of expected, you know, when Stephen ran into him at his house, like, we sort of build up to that. Why was he there? What was he doing there? And we set this thing up where Luke and Nellie kind of can feel what each other's going through. You get that classic twin thing, you know, that the twin can feel the other's pain and so on. But he gives some actual examples of, you know, this one time I broke my foot and she could feel it. She was watching TV and she had to ice her own foot. And it's sort of playing with that. But, you know, and they kind of joke about it as a kid where she just kind of says, oh, he likes that hat. I know, it's a twin thing. And he gets this bowler hat, which becomes a big thing because we get another character in this one. Or not, I'll say character, another entity, manifestation of his fear, which I'm kind of thinking of all rather than them all being individual ghosts of some kind. I'm thinking of all the entities we're seeing as kind of almost created by each individual person, as opposed to an actual separate ghost or spirit of some kind, you know. But it's just a guess at this point. I'm not sure, but. So we see him in rehab. I actually, credit where credit's due, I laughed quite a bit at the start of this episode where there's this he's in rehab and this guy's telling this story at rehab. He's a blind man and he's talking about how he got clean by joining the army and he went off to Iraq, and he tells this horror story about finding this girl, this dead girl with her eyeballs that were melted, and how he kept seeing her everywhere. And that eventually led to him stabbing out his own eyeballs in the hopes that he wouldn't see her anymore, but now that's all he sees. And the counsellor says, okay, which new person wants to go next? And she's like, Luke, how about you? And he just says, you want me to follow that? And that made me laugh. I'm not going to lie, that really made me laugh. So that's what, and the funny thing is, he actually does have a really good story if he goes back to his haunted house childhood. But I mean, it just still made me laugh. I'm not topping that. You kidding me? Don't put me on after that, guy. That's rough. Tough act to follow, man. So we get him in this friendship that he has with this girl named Joy, who's also in rehab. I will say that I feel like it took me like 5 times before I really was sure what her name was, because every time I heard it, it felt like it was flipping between Joey and Chloe, and I heard the opposite one every single time. It was like back and forth until it kind of settled on Joey after a while. But they're very close. They kind of help each other with their tasks, and they confide in one another. And we see him wake up in the middle of the night like we did when Nellie dies, and Joey's gone. She's left a note saying don't follow me, and he's pissed about it. He's upset, and the counsellor's kind of saying that, you know, sometimes, and she doesn't accuse Luke of this. She points that out. I'm not saying this is what happened with you, Luke, but sometimes if you depend on each other too much, it can feel like pressure, because you're not just healing yourself. You're healing someone else. You're recovering someone else, and that can be a lot of pressure. And addicts, as a rule, tend not to be super reliable. So he very quickly jumps out the window and goes running after her, and that's why he's out. He did get a 90-day clean chip, but he's out looking for his friend Joey. He wants to help her and bring her back, and he does find her. She is buying drugs, and ultimately he's like, well, we can get money. I'll go to my brother. He actually ends up going to where Stephen used to live. He goes to Stephen's wife, who, you know, obviously turns him away and says, nah, I mean, I'm glad you're clean, I'm glad you're doing well, but, you know, me and your brother split up. You can't stay here, and I'm not giving you money. But that's how he finds the address of his brother, which leads him to, you know, the scenes we got in the first episode. And of course, this time we have context, and you can sadly see the scene coming where Joey's probably going to ditch him. She kisses him, and she's like, I'm going to go use the bathroom, which in this case means the alley, the little junkie's room, as she called it. And she makes a runner, and his money's gone. And it's after this where he starts suffering from withdrawal symptoms. And the episode does a really good job here, because it made it clear to point out exactly what withdrawal symptoms are, especially in his case, how he describes it. because there's a flashback, of course, when he goes to the old house that Stephen used to live at. We get a flashback of when he, 2 months ago, when he was 30 days clean, he brought Joey for dinner with them, and they got to meet her, and she was very well spoken, and she kind of almost like verbally sparred with Stephen in a way that was quite impressive, where Stephen's at a point where he's had enough of Luke. He's stopped having faith in him, and he's kind of a dick, actually. He kind of puts him down more than he needs to, where he keeps bringing up his failures and shoving them in his face. So when the scene in the kitchen ends, where he's like, I came here to celebrate the fact that I was 30 days clean, but thanks for making me feel like shit again. You're kind of on his side, because Stephen is being a dick. He is being a complete dick in these two scenes, but Joey kind of holds her own and kind of like agrees with him and rolls his point forward into like a new point, and really holds her own. And Stephen somehow tries to manipulate this when he's talking to Luke afterwards, of her being too slick and that she's maybe not trustworthy, and this obviously hurts him because he cares about her, and they care about each other, and they're adamant throughout the episode that it's not a relationship. But she kisses him, and it's almost like she's playing upon the weakness that maybe he does deep down want it to be a relationship. And she was, but it's after. But he describes in that scene with his brother what withdrawal feels like. He describes the how cold it is, despite no matter how warm it is in LA, no matter how sweaty it might be, you're shivering, you're cold, your body aches, all these different things. And it's very neat, because even if you have a general sense of what withdrawal is, not everyone will have first hand experience with it, of course, and you may have like a general idea. It's a really neat, just a neat, structural touch, or not even just structural. It's a neat setup and payoff, right? Where even if it's something where you might be able to assume that a lot of people will understand and get, it's a neat touch that it makes a point of telling us, just in case you don't know the exact symptoms. Specifically mentioning how he describes it and how he feels when he's in withdrawal, because it's after this when Joey runs off, where he's looking for her, and he starts to shiver, he starts to be cold, he starts to like exhibit signs of withdrawal, and of course he gets mugged at one point. He tries to find Joey, and of course the figure that keeps popping up is the demon in the bowler hat, which we'll get to probably more with the flashbacks, and I'll mention that. But it's funny because at this point I was actually thinking there was going to be a twist here. I was thinking there was going to be a twist where Joey, he never found her. Like, we knew she was real before, because obviously we set up at the start of the episode, in last episode, that he had an imaginary friend called Abigail when he was a kid. And I actually thought she was going to be a huge part of this episode, because the opening scene is him as a kid, like, playing with Abigail. And I was expecting there'd be some kind of twist that, not that Joey was always Abigail, but at least after he left the rehab center, that this was Abigail in some capacity, and that he never got money for her because she wasn't real. He did actually use, and this was all like masking the fact that the imaginary friend, the ghost, the spirit, whatever, was kind of manipulating him into using again, and he was actually suffering withdrawal because he had used when he first found her and was going through withdrawal over the next night. And I was fairly convinced that was the case in some capacity, even though I do like the idea that she still she steals from, because one of the things that Steven says when he's fighting with Luke in the flashback is that, hey, like, I've given you enough chances, like, I don't have any chances left to give. I'm defeated. I can't have any hope for you. You've beat that into submission. It's gone. And Luke mentions in his speech, because the tease has 90-day speech at the start. I mean, it's not until he's getting mugged where we actually get to hear the full thing. But he talks about how he's never felt what his family's felt, the disappointment, and just the where he's just ready to give up on someone. And he's never felt like he's been taken advantage of the way he's taken advantage of his family. So there is a neat poetic, not justice, but there's a poetic twist to him being taken advantage of by another addict. And so that works anyway on its own. But I was thinking at this point, I bet he never actually found her. This has all been, the in his head, whether it's a spirit or just his imagination, that's this kind of justifying why he's taking the money, and he doesn't remember taking the drug, and he's just having withdrawal now. But when obviously Steven's looking for him because Nellie died, and he gets the social worker and they come looking for him, and they find him at the end of the episode, And it's when they come up and they tell him that Nellie's dead that I kind of changed my mind here. Now, it could still be what I was saying, but I'm actually thinking he never took any drugs. I'm thinking what we're seeing as withdrawal is actually Nellie's death. That's what he's feeling. The cold is not the withdrawal. The cold is that she's dead and that her body's cold. Maybe I am taking leaps here, but it was the way that this all seemed to start happening slowly after she died, and and like I say, the Joey stuff still works because he was, he's now felt the betrayal that he's inflicted upon others. So that's still an important character beat. But it was just like, oh wait, the whole episode we keep hearing about this twin thing. We hear about how they can tell how each other feel, the broken ankle, everything else, and I was like, shit, that's what this is. I think that's what it is. I think it's him feeling whatever death is going to feel like in this context when he's feeling, and of course the episode ends with, he asks Stephen, how did it happen, and he says it was suicide, and then he stops and thinks about it for a second, and then Luke says no, it wasn't, and that's when we cut to credits because he can sense that. And I think it's actually really neat. Something that I never really thought about until now is saving Nellie till episode, because the episode 5, I noticed the title of episode 5 is the Bent Neck Lady. So next episode is absolutely a Nellie episode, and I actually think it's genius saving her for last out of the initial 5 episodes, because she is the most interesting one. She's the most mysterious one. The plot is kind of revolving around her more than anyone else in terms of her death and what happened on that night where she went to that house is driving the story. And I think this is going to be a really interesting case where episode 5 is going to be kind of a mid-season finale in a way, in the sense that it does feel like a show of two halves, because, I don't know if we're going to go through each of the characters again in the second half, or if it will drop this formula of, focusing on a character for each episode. It could do either, I'm not sure. But either way, it's going to feel kind of a two halves thing, and episode 5 will be the mid-season finale, if you will. Which isn't as relevant in a Netflix show, because we're just going to be watching it, consistently. But still, cool. But she is the most fascinating one, and I think that's why that's genius. So, and him being sure she didn't kill himself, or didn't kill herself rather, is really exciting kind of like prospect. So, okay, right, he believes, and we see why he equally believes in ghosts. Obviously, we'll go back into his childhood here. Obviously, in present day, he is seeing the bowler hat tall man. I'll just call him the bowler hat man for reference here. I don't know if there's an official name for the bugger. I'm glancing at the cast list to see if there's a moniker, because I presume an actor played him. Oh yeah, Bowler Hat Man is actually what I said. I called him Bowler Hat Man. That is exactly what he's called. Okay, cool. Bowler Hat Man. So we see in the flashbacks that he is creeping around in it, because the bowler hat, of course, is something that's just found in up the spiral, the classic haunting spiral staircase, and young Luke wants the hat. He wants the hat, and he gets the hat. His dad kind of says, "Hey, if you don't believe, big boys don't believe in these made up things. So if you don't believe, I'll say you're a big boy and you can get the hat." So he kind of agrees and he gets the hat. But the ghost comes in the middle of the night, and it's kind of this very tall guy, and he's not got the bowler hat on yet because he takes the bowler hat from Luke's room when he goes in. But because I think we're getting this trend where there's one or two big horror scenes specifically in each episode, and this was definitely the big one in this one. Is the floating ghost is going around, except his cane. He's got a really long cane, and the cane is banging on the floor as he's moving, but his feet are just floating. I will say I have a mild nitpick here, where I thought it was weird that his feet were level. And I get that he's otherworldly and he's a ghost or whatever, and he doesn't have to play by the rules of physics, but I did think it looked really... There was like a fakeness to it because his feet were flat, as if he was actually on like a flat surface. I felt like having his feet actually dripping down, like you would be if you were hanging in the air. Your feet would be kind of like, going down a little bit. I felt like that would just look a bit more natural, and I get that that's a weird complaint because we're dealing with the unnatural anyway, but the visual just looked kind of weird, rather than creepy. I thought his feet didn't look creepy, I thought his feet looked weird. If that makes any sense. But male complaint, because it's very well handled. Luke shuts his door, he sees him just going around, he shuts his door and he hides under the bed. and he's trying to hold his breath, and he eventually lets out a gasp, and it turns round, and the hand comes under. He takes the bowler hat, of course, before he goes out. But it's later on when, you know, Nellie's woken up because of the bent neck lady. Luke believes her, of course, and gives her this technique to try and deal with her fear. And you know, he's counting the buttons 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, each one representing a member of their family. And we see him doing this in present day when he gets scared. He paces and counts to 7 over and over again to try and deal with his fear. So it's interesting. Oh, of course, there's some stuff he brings up about his mother. He brings up that he used to, believe that she was coming back to get him. They get sent to live with their aunt, after the incident, and every time he saw a car, like the headlights coming up, he thought that was his mother coming to get him and take him home, and it never was. It was this hope that was always fleeting, and they kind of play with that at the end, of course, because when the bowler hat man does back into him, and Luke gains the courage to turn around and look at him in the street right before Stephen shows up, it's actually his mother wearing the bowler hat, and she says, "Come home, son," or something to that effect, and then our eyes become headlights, and then that kind of transitions into the car coming with Stephen. Really neat little touch. But yeah, so I mean, the episodes have been doing a very good job of like giving us each character and giving us their backstory, their demons, if you will, their inner demons. And it is a show where the characters do have their demons, and I do think the show at its core is about dealing with trauma. I got a very good comment in the last episode about what the show is really about, and basically saying, okay, it's a horror show, but it's really about these things. And I kind of responded to that by saying, well, no, it's not that it's about these things instead. It's just that good horror shows, or good horror movies usually, because horror shows are a lot more rare, although they're starting to become more common now, but a lot more horror movies. The best ones tend to be about something else. The horror tends to be a tool, just kind of like how science fiction uses a tool. Science fiction, often the aliens will be used as an allegory for racism. You hit aliens in it, but they're standing in for another race. Horror movies can often be used to deal with things like trauma, to deal with things like, obviously social horror is a big thing in Night of the Living Dead. The best horror movies tend to be about something else under the surface, and I think this one is about trauma, and all the kids have all kind of got their own thing. They all dealt with things differently as kids, and that's kind of led to how they all deal with it as adults. And they've all kind of grown apart mostly. I mean, Theo and Shirley are kind of close, of course. I mean, at least physically they're close because they live in the same place. But whereas a lot of them have kind of drifted away from each other. I suppose Luke and Nellie were also kind of close still as well, because of the twin thing more than anything else. And she was maybe the one person who still kind of believed in him, because she, at least growing up, also believed in the ghosts and the stuff that we're seeing. So it's interesting, and I think there's something to read into that the two youngest kids are the ones who believe in the horror side of it a bit more. They believe, like, they were so young, it traumatized them even more than the older kids, and that's why, if you're going to look at it, obviously I believe there's real supernatural things going on in the show because it's a supernatural horror show, but if you take away the fiction of it and you look at the characters and how they process whatever tragedy they went through, it makes sense that the younger kids are the ones who are making up the fantastical side of things, and the older kids are the skeptical ones, because they were already old enough to kind of be hit by it in a more real way. And there's things to look at there. There's reasons to deconstruct that a little bit. But yeah, so no, and we have very different types of characters as well. We have an addict, of course, who, much like the soldier at the start of the episode, who I'll admit, the soldier at the start, the ex Marine, I feel like he was a little bit rough in terms of the acting. I don't think his acting was all that great, but it wasn't the worst, but he stuck out as just being maybe not up to the task of giving this monologue. But like he said about try to like not see the girl with the melted eyes, which could also make a really good ghost. I'm just going to say that right now. But it's kind of the same with the bowler hat man, and with the drugs for Luke, where he's trying not to see him, and the drugs were kind of helping with that. And it seems like after these 90 days, he's done quite well at not thinking about it, but it's coming back. And I wonder again if him seeing that ghost again is also related to how Nellie died, and how you know, whatever happened with her and the bent neck lady. So I'm super pumped that the next one's called the bent neck lady. I'm super pumped to see where we go with this. Really interesting stuff. So yeah, so they're all living with the trauma of what happened to their mother, and that's what this whole show's about more than anything else, and how they're dealing with it. But of course, we're going to have some delightful spooky thrills, I assume, going forward. So no, so yeah, and there's a good bit of heart to this story. You know, him looking out for his friend. You know, in a really unfortunate circumstance where they're both in rehab, but he really cares and wants to look out for her, and you're kind of rooting for him. And I think him not actually, you know, relapsing is another sign of like wanting to root for him, you know, because Steven's kind of a dick, but he seems to be fighting through it anyway. So you kind of hate Steven a little bit after this episode, and hopefully he turns around and has a bit of redemption and tries to be less of a dick in the future. That'd be nice. But here we go. So that is episode 4 of Haunting of Hill House. So I'll be back pretty soon with episode 5, so look forward to that. Let me know what you thought of this one in the comments below. Like and subscribe, all that stuff. Get us on the Twitters at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. If you want to get me specifically on Twitter, get me at Wibble89. If you want to support the channel and everything we do here, all the reviews and keeping them coming, you can head over to patreon.com/mailfuzztv, and you can support us for as little as $1 per month. But that is us, so thank you very much once again for watching or listening. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?